Gentlemen, the time has come once again to discuss things.
Don't stop me now. Don't stop me, 'cause I'm having a good time, having a good time. I'm a shooting star leaping through the sky like a tiger, defying the laws of gravity. I'm a racing car passing by like Lady Godiva. I'm gonna go, go, go. There's no stopping me.
Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Geeky Gentlemen. I'm Sid42. Joining me today is...
I geek for fun.
Indeed. Today we're talking about what?
The one-of-a-kind cult classic British horror comedy film, Shaun of the Dead.
Indeed. This movie's a lot older than I realized.
Mm-hmm.
For some reason I always thought Shaun of the Dead was like 2007, 2008. And I guess that's maybe when it got a little more popular. But I was like, wow, 2004. That's crazy old. This
Yeah, because that's
like
when Hot
15
Fuzz
years
came
old.
out.
Yeah, you're right. This movie's like 15 years old. That's crazy to me.
It's just one of those things where my age shows, because part of the reason why I wanted to bring this up is this is a movie I very much grew up on. It was one of my favorite movies that I played a lot, just through multiple stages of my life, and I've always appreciated it on a different level every time I've watched it. But it's one of those things where I've never really had an opportunity or inkling to before to discuss it critically. It's always one of those things that I've just enjoyed superficially, or sometimes with my brain off, sometimes with my brain on. But a movie that is purely for my nostalgia pleasure, then something I actually tried to put a critical lens to, and I was curious to see if it did hold up and if anyone else shared those opinions.
I mean, I think it's a cult classic for a reason. I think that it is a very well-made film. Obviously, Edgar Wright's become a huge director, not in small part because of this. He's got a just very distinct style that, I hate to say Simon Pegg and, what's the other guy's name? Shit.
Nick Frost.
Nick Frost, yeah. They're not as funny without him. They tried to do the whole comedic duo thing in other movies, and it just didn't work as well because Paul sucked. and it's because Edgar Wright didn't direct that. I'm at least 90% sure Edgar Wright didn't direct Paul. It didn't have any of his style to it. Did you watch Paul?
I watched Paul, yes.
Yeah.
Not because I thought initially, maybe it is tangentially tied to the culinary trilogy, but no.
No, it's just Simon Pegg and director Greg Mottola. I should probably do actual research before I just say things, but yeah, that it's very much trying to do a lot of the same things that Shaun of the Dead, Hot Fuzz did, but it's not got that very distinct feel to it. It's such a hard thing to try to describe direction, but it really does kind of shine through as to why film is a director's medium, because God, just the style that Edgar Wright has is just so distinct and non-apeable as far as visually timed comedy. Which is, it's going to be a really weird thing to try to discuss in a podcast, because one of my rules for reviewing comedy, and it's more just a rule to help me make a review that doesn't suck, is don't describe the funny stuff. Don't quote the funny lines, because then all you're doing is just ruining the movie for someone who hasn't seen it. You're taking all the good parts out of it. But it's going to be hard to describe what makes this movie so good, because I don't think the writing is like super strong. I think it's all right. I think it's pretty good. I think what makes this movie as funny and as lasting as it has been is all based on the visual direction that Edgar Wright brings to it.
I think that's fair. I quite like a lot of the script here. I think a lot of the actual relation to the characters and payoffs through dialogue they're very well thought out, and they inform things on a very character-based level. So I think it is strong, but you are 100% right. It would never reach the heights that Edgar Wright manages to bring out through it. And I think the best way to describe how he directs these things is he's got such a different level of energy to his films that many don't really kind of like. His style is very kinetic. It's very moment, fast, a lot of information all at once, but then lingers on some things, and then fast. Like he knows how to use pacing perfectly.
Yeah, like the jump cuts are a huge thing. The like reusing shots is really funny. The way he'll linger on things is hilarious. The bit with the fucking slide slayed me. It's so good. And it's just such a simple fucking thing, but it's just such a good choice of framing, of timing for how long to do it. And like part of it is of course actor timing, to know like how long to hold on a moment and like how to come back down, but just the way that scene is scripted versus the way that scene is shot, I think are two completely different things. Because in the script, it's like, it climbs up a slide and comes back down. But the way it just all comes together in the moment is really, really good. And then there's all kinds of like really great physical comedy, like with the fences and with the attempting to kill the zombies with fucking records. Just everything about that is such good, unique physical comedy. It's the same level as someone getting slapped in the face with a fish, but it feels fresh, you know?
Mm-hmm. I think that is definitely something that it's weird to talk about this as its own thing, because although it's not the biggest movie in the world, it has influenced so much that came after it, especially in the zombie genre, in terms of trying to make comedy into that. And this is really one of the first times where you kind of do get that slapstick thing with zombies, but not in a way where it's, I think this was like Roger Ebert or something who said this about, which I think is totally right of how the comedy works in this. It's not the zombies that are funny, it's the people's reaction to the zombies. That's where the comedy comes from. It's entirely as if you took a sitcom cast and threw them in a zombie apocalypse, and that's where the humor comes from. The zombie apocalypse isn't the funny part. That's played straight. It's the characters where the humor comes from.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean, like, there's just so much that he's kind of been known for after the fact that's all based on those same tricks of like really distinct visual style, really great ability to communicate comedy, without it becoming too, I don't know. Because I want to say without it becoming too played out, where he's using the same tricks over and over again, but I think he uses the same tricks over and over again. I think he does it well. He's got it. He's got one trick and he knows how to do it, kind of guy, you know.
Yeah.
Where, like, no matter how many times you see it, it always works. Because like I'm just thinking of talk about a joke in a movie we're not reviewing, I guess. I just think of like Scott Pilgrim versus the World, where like Knives comes to the door and she's like, "Is Scott here?" And you see him jump out the fucking window in the background, and his roommate goes, "Just left." And I'm like, that's like a really, really good like physical visual comedy moment. And there's just stuff like that in here. It's the exact same kind of setup where it's like, okay, here's what you're expecting, then here's the gag. And it's just all done visually. It's all done just to communicate it to you. You mentioned that you really do like the dialogue, and I don't want to like crap on the dialogue or anything. I do think the dialogue here is really funny. There are some just fantastically hilarious lines that crack me up. But again, I think so much of it is just the framing of events that happen that really sell it as well as it did. If it weren't for the visual style of the film, this would be like a scary movie level parody in my mind, with just slightly better writing.
I guess that's an argument you can make. I would just maybe respond to that where, like, at that point, because it's so clear that that's, again, because Edgar Wright worked with Simon Pegg and Nick Frost on a show called Spaced before this, and an episode of that was the inspiration of Shaun of the Dead, where, like, the main character played by Simon Pegg just hallucinated he was in the zombie apocalypse, and they were like, well, why don't we just make a zombie movie? It's very clear that because he helped with the script, this is being written for that style, and it's directly trying to use that to the best of its ability, rather than, say, a script that was written that he just picked up and then tried to adapt it into a style, which I still think he could do quite well. But this clearly comes from some of these jokes just physically can't work without how he directs things. So I think I think it's a bit unfair to try and take that away when it's so embedded into its DNA.
No, I think you're right. That's fair. In the hands of a lesser director, a lot of the jokes wouldn't land as well. So I guess that's a fair point to make. But let's talk a little bit more generally about other aspects of the movie. So it's been a long time since I've watched this, and being a 28-year-old who's in a management position that I'm not like super happy with, and I have to deal with people who are kind of getting younger than me when I used to be the young guy at work, and I'm having to just deal with their bullshit on top of my own bullshit. The whole moment in the fucking department store really hit home for me. I felt that. Oh.
And that's one of those things where I think this is, like, when I first watched this, I didn't even know, I was maybe like 8, 9, 10 or something. But that's obviously a joke I wouldn't get. It's just something that just, the humor of that still made me laugh, but it's not something, you get it on a completely different level once you're actually in that position. So I feel that's one of the strengths of this, where it works on so many different levels that you can watch this. Like, it's one of those movies that really does feel better on multiple rewatches.
Yeah, I'd really agree with that. But I also do really just like Shaun's journey through the film, where, like, this is such a random quote, but I feel it's really apt to Shaun's character. Some are born great, some become great, some have greatness thrust upon them. And I think Shaun is definitely the third there, where, like, he is just kind of coasting through his life, and then just, like, the shit hits the fan, and finally it's something that he's actually kind of not terrible at, you know? Like, that moment in the bar where they're all like, we're at the flat, and we're gonna stay at the flat, and we had no idea what to do, and Shaun came, and he had a plan, and we didn't have any better ideas, so we went with him. I'm like, yeah, that's kind of like his whole thing, is he's not like a super genius, but he actually excels under this very specific situation. And that's kind of where he finds himself, and I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, I really like how that's framed. Where, like, this is such a smart film in how it uses zombies, because it's entirely one of the best uses of that as a genre, where it's not just a threat, it's entirely related to Shaun's journey. Like, the title of this movie, Shaun of the Dead, couldn't have been any better, because that is entirely, the entire world revolves around this guy's character arc, where you start off and you see his everyday life before the zombie apocalypse, and then you repeat that same scene with him doing the exact same motions but during the zombie apocalypse, and it's just so clear to like anyone, like, this guy is just on autopilot. Like, this is just someone who's just living their life, and this direct change is the chance they need to actually grow past that, because they're threatening to lose their chance to grow if they don't. Like, it's gonna just be one of those sad old fucks sitting in the Winchester doing what the hell happened, and that's really something. Especially like growing up in England, and you've been to pubs and stuff, like, you see so many people who just waste their lives like that, and that's why I've always, like, this movie feels very good as like an English comedy, because it's got that English sense of the way this place is. You can just easily just fall into a rut and never get out of it if you let yourself do that, and I find that really interesting. And as I get older, I really relate to that a lot more. I'm just like, yeah, there are chances where if you just don't do anything, if you just get too complacent, things are going to pass you by, and using zombies for that is really interesting. And, like, again, just to go with the thing of, like, how the characters are used in this really well, like, Ed is literally the embodiment of Shaun, what he would like to be doing, just sitting down, doing nothing, playing games all day, no sense of responsibility at all. And then you got his other roommate, which the name escapes me at the moment, who's just all work, all responsibility, all ambition, and he's directly in the middle of that. And having them both be his roommates, but one of them's his best friend and one of them is like an older friend, like, that's really fucking great. Like, that's such smart writing in making that directly parallel to his character personality. And it's something that, again, you don't get in most comedies, of just that level of detail.
Yeah, I think that really works, and it kind of just all culminates in as like the climax of the movie comes, where, you know, like, they're fucking trying to get into the Winchester, and Ed is just fucking worthless and gets them all screwed. He just fucking takes that phone call and sits down. No, can't really talk right now. Well, then why'd you answer? It's like, it's just the most, like, incompetent, where even though he's, like, the cool one, the funny one, he's just fucking useless. It's like that scary level of just, you know, not caring about anything. And then you've got, Pete is the character's name,
Right.
the other roommate, and he's just so, like, wrapped up in his own stuff that he doesn't even have friends anymore. He lives with his friends and he's not friends with them anymore. He's having boss conversations with his roommate friend, you know? Like, he's having that conversation when your boss takes you aside and it's like, listen, you need to do this. And it's like, why the fuck don't you do it? It's just, I don't know, it's really, really interesting how that all plays together. I hadn't really thought about that aspect of it, but I think you're right. That's definitely there.
And I think that's something that's in most of, obviously those two are the primary examples because they're meant to be directly, these are the people he lives with that reflect his two sides. But there's some of that in everyone, really. Like, every character gets a little mini arc. Like, the guy who wants to just get with
David.
Yeah, David. He's just like, he really just, like, eventually just loses his shit. But it comes from a place where it's completely natural, and you get it as this guy wishes this is the guy who, even though Shaun feels he's not getting what he wants, he wishes he had Shaun's life. Like, that's the kind of, like, he wishes, and he resents him for not using that to the fullest. That's an interesting character to have from that, because it directly makes him step up to confront that guy. And then you get, like, his mom, who's just, like, really tragic. Like, but then also you get like, it's when you get to his stepdad, again, I'm so bad at the names of this film, which is actually annoying me again, how much I hyped up, how much I watched this. It just shows that's how bad my memory is. Like, I literally only watched this a couple of hours ago and I'm already forgetting names. But when we get to the stepdad and stuff, and, like, he's already trying to mold Shaun into what he thinks he can do, but he's done it in a way where it's not come off clear enough, or they never had the chance to have that reunion. All of that's extremely character based, and it works for the humor, but also works when this film actually just want to tug at your heartstrings. Like that scene in the car where he's just dying and he's just like, look, it's hard being a father. Like that stuff like that really does like hit you. Like that's just like, oh shit, we're having a moment now. But then it immediately doesn't linger on it. It's immediately then, okay, but now here's the comedy part coming in, because this is a situation where you do not get a chance to mourn, and that's funny, but that's also heartbreaking, which I think is such a good use of horror comedy, because those two things go hand in hand, because it's all in the timing.
And that is one of the things about horror and comedy just have in common. They will never get the goddamn Academy Award. Because they're not serious enough, but they're the harder things to pull off than drama. Anyone can make you cry. It's a bitch to make someone really laugh and have it be like anyone can slap someone in the face with a fish, but it's a bitch to get like a really, really good laugh out of someone with something that's like also going to make you think. Or also like is written well as far as like character focused, plot focused comedy. Like I like the Deadpool movies, but like there's moments where I'm like, okay, this is just goofy silliness. I like I don't know. I love Gunpowder and the Fist. It is one of my favorite comedic films. It's just stupid. It is just a stupid fucking movie. Whereas this is like, it's very, very funny, but it's very funny in really smart ways. Like it's a really well written script, and if you take the comedy out of it, it probably becomes more of like generic zombie film, but that's the strength of it. It's generic zombie film, but not bad zombie film. You know, it's still like written, you know, yeah, you got the moment where everyone dies and it's all there. It's funny that Edgar Wright is so heavily involved in this, because I was just looking through his IMDb, and he did one of the fake trailers on Grindhouse, and that's really funny because the Grindhouse movie Planet Terror is really taking... I could almost make the argument that Planet Terror is like an American version of Shaun of the Dead. As far as like premise. I don't know if you've ever seen it, but like...
No.
It's... You may have seen them, like some of the imagery for it. Did you ever see the chick with the gun for a leg?
Yes.
Yeah, that's Planet Terror. Where it's like it's very Americanized, where it's completely over the top and ridiculous, but it's got like, okay, it's zombie apocalypse, but kind of hilarious and insane. And it's got all the crazy celebrity cameos with fucking Bruce Willis killed Osama bin Laden, but now he's a zombie. It's so fucking stupid. But yeah, that's like it's just funny that Edgar Wright was kind of tangentially involved in Grindhouse, because Planet Terror seems just very heavily, like, Planet Terror would not exist without Shaun of the Dead, I guess. That's what I'm getting at. And that's only like 2 years later too, which is kind of crazy.
It shows just how much of a impact this had, because this was definitely 28 days later. A lot of the other zombie video games and stuff around this time and then continuing on after really did start the zombie boom, which we're well past now, but for like a good, like almost like a decade after this, there was just zombies everywhere. And I definitely think this helped push that, because it showed that you can do different styles with the genre.
I think that's a really good point. It lets you show that zombies were just another like tool to use to get really intense character drama out of things, which I think is a pretty smart move.
It's very much like, it's a completely different tone, but I don't know if he's gone on record or saying this. He probably has, because I think he's mentioned it before, but I think The Walking Dead, especially the comic book, takes a lot of inspiration from this, just in the sense that we're going to take the everyman, but not in a way where like it's like the the Romero zombie movies where the zombies are more the main focus. There's like an ensemble cast. We're gonna take just Rick Grimes or Shaun from this movie, and we're just gonna build a world around that character's arc. And zombies are just going to be the ever-present threat, but they're not. It's such a they're very. Just need to praise this for a bit, and why I like how this film uses that, and how I think the stronger zombie adaptations or just usages in fiction work best is zombies are very good to have as a recurring threat because they can be overwhelmingly destructive, where like they can disable the entire everyone's of society. They can take over the entire world basically, but they're also weak enough where they don't have to be an unstoppable threat where you have to make up like vampires run into, or even just like superpower people like Jason Voorhees, or like you never doubt that a person can take out a zombie or like 10 zombies depending on if like what version they are. But they're also like they've got that potency where like they can wipe you out if you let them get in big enough mass. And I think that works really well for stuff like this because you don't have to make Shaun, oh, he's also a really good fighter. He's like, no, he's just a guy with a baseball bat if he gets lucky. he can't shoot for shit. He gets one gunshot the entire movie. And I appreciate that because it shows you can literally take any character from in this situation. You can get good drama out of it. They don't have to have any prerequisites.
Yeah, that's a really, really good point of just how versatile and and just I don't really think I have anything to add. I want to add something, but it's just so well made. Good point, Alfie. Oh, okay, I know what I can add to that. Fuck you, just say cricket bat. You're British, just do it. Do it.
Cricket bat.
Thank you.
There you go.
Damn.
There's that's been used. But yeah, like I should just use the fucking spade. There you go. But yeah, I like a lot of the stuff in this. This was actually, I don't know if you ever had this, but I know when I was growing up as a kid, this was one of the things that really got my imagination going. And it's one of the best uses of this, I feel, of okay, what do you do if this I always used to be with my friends when we would watch this film, be like, okay, what would our plan be? And it was just really fun to do. And I think this is one of the best examples where it's portrayed in a way where this is 100% legit how things would probably go, especially in England, where things would go to shit for like a day, but then the military get their shit together and just take it out, because especially with these kind of zombies where they're just easy to kill. But in that day, you're fucked if you don't figure out a plan. I really appreciate getting to see the logic the characters here use, even though some of the decisions they make are just completely asinine, ass backwards. That's funny when it's used, but there's actually is some kind of like, all right, I want to know where the exits are. I want to be on the ground, like stuff like that. I'm like, oh yeah, that's a good plan.
Have I ever told you my plan to survive a zombie apocalypse?
Go for it. The best perfect place for it now.
Right. You go to a hospital and find the coma ward and just chill. Because you know what? Every fucking zombie movie opens with someone waking up in a goddamn coma ward. And they're fine. It's just, it's like Walking Dead, Resident Evil, 28 Days Later, all of them. They just fucking go to a coma ward. You're gonna be fine.
You just don't like the smell, apparently.
Yeah, I remember like one time I took like a would you survive a zombie apocalypse quiz, and they're like, all right, the zombie outbreak happens, where do you go? And like one of the option was a hospital. And they're like, no, that would be awful because that's where the outbreak's gonna happen. And I'm like, no, what the fuck you, Liz? Like, it clearly works. It clearly works every time.
Have you watched any zombie fiction, sir?
Yeah. I remember I told someone about that once. They're like, you think it'd be like a fucking buffet, but you're right. It always seems to work. What the hell? It's such a fucking trope. I love it to death. But yeah, just fucking coma ward. That's my plan.
I think that's a good one. And like, it's something I'm actually glad this movie has a lot of references to just pop culture in general, but also like a lot of British pop culture, especially around the time. And there's just like the zombie stuff as well is it's just very weird getting to see this and compare this to American zombie fiction, where it's so like so a moment in this film which you could only do with an English cast is whenever I sit down. Like when shit, everything's gone to shit, and they just decide to sit on the sofa and just watch TV and take a minute to breathe. Like that is such a not a, okay, we got to get to the chat. We got to take them all out with all the like. It just I appreciate stuff like that in this film where the characters, despite the situation they're in, still act in very much the same way they were beforehand. Just in a believable, like everyone changes and goes through character development, but no one shifts on a dime.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I mean, I think that works with like the weird premise of the movie too, which is even though you're a zombie, you still keep like traits of your personality. Mm-hmm. Like that's just God. That last shot is just hilarious. The very Britishness of the zombies make perfect use in the service sector. God, that hurt.
That's 100% why capitalism is a problem.
Oh, that one just slayed me. I was like, God, you just gonna call me out like that? Ouch. But no, I thought that was so funny how all that kind of came together, and it works so well in the course of this movie because there's like all these character things and these pretty much like, oh, look who it is. And like one of the big problems with the zombie films and games and stuff is they're just cannon fodder a lot of the time. Like it's not like, oh, they're people anymore. This is like one of those things where like, oh no, they're people, and there's almost like a sick perversion to getting to kill some of them. and that's like really kind of like, yeah, I mean, if you were living in if you were working a shitty job and suddenly your fucking like boss or your shitty roommate became a zombie, maybe it'd be kind of fun to get to kill them.
It's like that. That's why they're so on board. Again, very interesting to see how this changes in development. But when we first see Shaun, he's got a very bad relationship with his stepdad. He's just like, "Oh, Mum, are you infected?" Oh no. Oh, don't worry, he's just affected. Oh, okay. Like, like it's just one of the things. Oh, fine, we can kill him. Don't worry, that's easy. Like that's such a. It's kind of fucked up to say, but I think you would have that reaction to some people in your life where like you would be like, is this person fine? Okay. Oh, that person. Yeah, not the biggest loss.
Yep. Oh, thank God. All right. Cool. Well. Yeah, that's a really good moment, and it works so well with like character developments here, and you just get like some catharsis from certain moments that are really fun. I also love how they use like characters that we've seen before but don't really have much of an attachment to, but like our characters do. So like it kind of has this kind of moment, like when they're on their way to the Winchesters, like, are we close? And they see the guy with the boots. It's like, oh, yep, we're close. That was pretty good. I like how all that just kind of, it just comes together really, really nicely.
Mm-hmm. And Edgar Wright, I think this is where I don't think he does it as well here as he will do in Hot Fuzz, but I still think it's done extremely well here for a comedy. Is he really fleshes out this world in a very short runtime, and that is kind of amazing. Like you get bit characters who never say a word here, but you can imagine their backstories and stuff. Like to the point where this movie had tie-in comics explaining things about different characters, like the girl in the garden at the start has a tie-in comic for how she got there and like her life and story and how she got infected and like a tragic thing. Like that's there. The kid at the end of the news report who's like, oh, this kid who took down his entire zombified family. Like fuck, I want to know that guy's movie. Like there's the when they go in the bar and they name off all the people. Like there's such a good job of giving everyone here. You can tell this place has been lived in. You can tell this is a place Shaun has lived in his entire life, so he knows everyone, at least tangentially. And that really plays up with the zombie thing, because then you get to have cameos for, in a lesser comedy or lesser film, you wouldn't know anything about them. But like you mentioned, it gives it from a character place, which I appreciate. And like later on in Hot Fuzz, Edgar Wright would do this, I think, better, where he literally fleshes out an entire town like every single detail. Like stuff like that is just fantastic, and it's a strength of his direction because of how he lingers on things, but also how he gets across a lot of information like in a very short amount of time, especially with characters. Like he can just say one line of, like, you can just in the script have a one-line description of a character, okay, fine, but the way he shoots it and plays up the actor's facial expressions or plays up the actor's like wardrobe, it really helps give you a certain sense of, oh, this is what this character is, without them having to say anything, which I think is great.
Yeah, and like the zombies have a very good visual distinction to them. Like in the big crowd shots, there's like really cool like things that they do to kind of draw your eye. So like there are two twins that are zombies, and I thought that was really cool. There's like I want to say it looks like maybe like 14 or 15-year-old black kid, and like I don't know what it is about him. Maybe the actor's just really extra, but your eye is just drawn to him. He's always like really close to the middle of the frame. There's something just about that actor that like visually cues you into him, and it just makes the scene feel more engaging, you know? So there's a lot of stuff like that just going on that works really well kind of all together, you know?
I think that's a good explanation as well. And I'll say that on the note that there are child zombies in this, and there's quite a lot of violence in this. This film has got balls, especially for when it came out. Like some of the directions it takes it, and despite being framed as a Simon Pegg comedy film, it's really brutal in some ways. It doesn't shy away from showing you bite wounds and like in exquisite detail, or like the people's necks getting bit out, and you see the neck part like literally come out of their neck. Like the practical effects work here really does show that they weren't just coming from this, oh, we're going to use the zombie genre for it. It's like, no, we really want to make a zombie film.
No, totally. Like, God, when they go look at his mom's arm and like it's just this dark black blood. I was watching this with Haley just like an hour or so ago, and she goes, oh, nope. Like it actually like got her, like that kind of, you know, true gross out horror moment, which is, you know, they really are going for it. They're not just, oh yeah, it's zombies and here's like some splashes of blood. They're like really doing the gore up, which is one of those things where like gore can really get overused and just get like exhausted by it, like the Saw movies eventually became. But when you do it just right like that, and you frame it in the right way, it really is effective, you know?
I definitely agree. It's something that it plays up with the tone of this film, where because everything else is still keeping you laughing, but there are moments where it's serious, you have that kind of reaction of, oh, like you're still like shocked by it, but you're also like, that guy got it bad. Like you're not, it's not got that tone where you immediately feel like, oh, holy shit, this is dark. Like someone gets ripped apart here, but you don't watch it and feel like, oh, that is horrifying. You get it like, well, he was kind of an asshole, but damn, like it's the perfect balance.
And it's still got like these comedic things of like, you see it all the time in zombie movies, but like, wouldn't that be almost like ridiculous? Like when the dude gets torn limb from limb, and like the two girls are trying to hold onto his legs, and they just pop right off, and they kind of like lose their footing. That's really funny. And then like the fucking one like just takes the leg and runs off into the crowd.
And she's alive still?
Is she by the end?
Yeah, she survived. I think there's a line in it or something near the end when they're gonna go see her, but it's 100%. I think she's also got a tie-in comic of how she survived, but she literally took that leg and beat her way out with it.
That's
like
amazing.
She survived, which is fucking like, that's a badass move. Like
like I remember friends and I always had the joke where like, oh, is this the video game that's finally going to be brutal enough to let you rip someone's spine and skull out of their body and then beat them to death with it? So it's like that level of a move.
And like it's something that works with the comedy, but also works with just you do really like the ending of this works well in just the resolution. Like everything gets paid off, but it's also really well done. there's such an escalation of wow, these people couldn't have fucked this up as bad as they did, and then it gets worse. Like that adds to the horror, but also adds to the humor.
And what I like about it is Shaun remains like such a predictable character, even though he keeps excelling in this situation. So like the David character has that line, he's like, oh yeah, what's his plan now that we're here? We're gonna just sit in the dark and eat peanuts? And then like he comes in and he's got this big badass moment and they go like, alright, so what's the plan? And then it just cuts to them sitting in the dark. He's like, does anyone like a peanut? And it's so perfectly, it's a perfect edit, it's a perfect cut. I'm sorry that I'm quoting the movie and explaining scenes, but it's just, I can't explain how well done, how perfectly that all ties into it without just describing the scene, because it's just so, it's classic setup. What is a joke? It's when you're expecting one thing but you get banana. It's that setup and then like the reversal, or sometimes in that particular case the confirmation of expectation. Is so like quintessential to the comedy of this movie that it's so tightly written in that way. There's no wasted dialogue here.
Oh yeah, that's a really good point. I think that's the best way to describe how it is written in like a succinct way. Is there is no wasted dialogue. I totally agree with you there.
Yeah. Like everything serves a purpose. Everything is like building into it. There's like moments that are more write-offy, but they all like serve the wider purpose of the direction of the film, which is really, really just it's a kind of like talent that you can just admire, I guess.
Mm-hmm. It's definitely a muscle Edgar Wright learns how to flex, and I think the performances in this film play off that quite well as well. I don't think there's ever a weak link here. I definitely think the standout is Simon Pegg and Nick Frost, because they just work with Edgar Wright. He brings out the best in them by far. But even just like the bit characters, or like Lizzie's like really good here. Like everyone had like, and the whoever who plays B something. No, it's not. Is it B something? Who's his mom? Shaun's mom?
Mum. Mom.
Yeah, like just how she plays, just being completely vacant.
Mm-hmm.
That's really good for like a zombie like story of just like saying this is how an old age can make you just completely like distant to the world, even when you learn this. But then she brings it as well with the acting, like the bit parts with like the stepdad. He really brings it in the like he can be that comical over the top thing, but then he brings it in the car. Like that's everything here plays off really well, and I gotta give that to the performances. I do think that is Edgar Wright bringing out the best in some of these things, but it really does show you like a lot of these are comedians who have worked with him before on other British shows, like Spaced and The Office. So I think it shows here that they've got his timing down for how to perform for this kind of film, for this kind of humor.
I think that's fair. Let's talk about the mom character, because she is, I mean, Philip too, but he's in less of it. The mom is like super out of things in just a really weird way that's like almost, I don't want to say it breaks suspension of disbelief, but like it almost starts to touch that. I think that she might be the bridge too far character for me. What do you think of the way she's handled?
I think the smartest thing here is she is the embodiment of how this film opens with Shaun, where he's just staring completely off into space, and like I think that's obviously meant to be a callback to him, as that's where he gets it from. She just exaggerated it because she's had to spend her life mostly on autopilot, but I guess it's something that maybe I'm more used to in British humor, because I don't know if this is something that translates, but the mom who's overly quaint, super polite, and is just here to be like sweet and nice, but is also just has no idea what's going on, is a very common trope in British humor. just like the kind old lady who has no idea what the fuck's going on to this outrageous situation, which is why I find it really funny all the times Ed's just trying to fucking pick her up. Like, that's just, those are some of the lines that get me the most. I don't know why, but just the MILF jokes kill me. Especially how she's portrayed, like just the fact that she's not like the typical hot, like she's just the sweetest, kindest, like, oh hello dear, and then meanwhile Ed's just like, I would fucking ooh. Like stuff like that's great, but it's also, I can see why. Again, it's more of an exaggeration than a lot of characters are in this, but I think it plays for the humor, and I think the payoff for it is quite nice, where if you pay attention to some of the scenes, you can see the moment where she does get bitten, and she's immediately trying to be more distant after that. And from a character purpose, that makes sense, that she's just terrified of what happened. She knows what's happened now. She doesn't know how to process it, so she's just kind of in her own world trying to figure that out in her head, much like Shaun does. So that's how I rationalize it. I do agree it's not the standout.
Yeah, it's just it's so inconsistent to everyone else. Kind of like accepts, okay, it's a zombie apocalypse. We don't want to use the Z word, but it's a zombie apocalypse. And at first she doesn't get it, which is fine, because at first Shaun and Ed don't think that's what it is until big old dude shows up, right? Like when it's just the girl in the yard, they think she's some kind of like drunk crazy person. And then she gets the pipe through her stomach, and then big old dude shows up. And then they realize, okay, yeah, zombie apocalypse. But like, so at first she's on that level. Her and Philip just don't really think of anything of it. Oh, it's just some druggies or whatever. But then like they're driving through town, running over zombies. And I still don't think she quite gets it at that point, because he has to, like, explain to her that her husband's gone, and she seems to think that he's still just, like, sick or whatever. Like, there seems to be this disconnect of her not getting the situation, whereas everyone else around them is clearly, like, caught on with what the situation is. And so I thought that was kind of the weirdest thing, where she's got the most... Let me think. She has written the most for the comedy, as opposed to, like, getting what's going on.
Yeah, I think you're right there. It's definitely the thing that's mostly a comedy trope out of this, like, played mostly straight. Like, there's no subversion on that. It's very much the typical, the character who has no idea what's going on around her. So that's where the joke comes in, and I think it's played fine, but I can totally understand why that wouldn't be working as well as the rest for you. I think that's a fair point.
Okay, all right. Do you have something in this that doesn't really work for you?
I think the biggest thing is, I think there is a problem with the inconsistency of just how threatening the zombies are meant to be. I feel like there are some parts where it gets kind of ridiculous, the things that they can escape from, but even then it's also like, then that begs the question of why things later become a threat. Like, I do think the weakest part is where Shaun tries to distract the zombies. He literally just jumps into the horde and just walks away, and he doesn't get a single scratch on him. That's something I think they could have handled better, and maybe have him have another escape route or something, so he doesn't have to jump in. Because whenever we see any other character next to like two zombies and they get close, they get bit, they get like taken out, and I think that's necessary to balancing the horror and comedy, and that for me leans a little bit too much into just this is purely for the joke part.
Mm-hmm. I think that's fair. It's one of those things where it does just, something needs to happen, and like I don't know what you really do beyond having him jump and run into the horde, because they are kind of, their backs are literally against a wall at that point, so you have literally written the characters into a corner. So I don't know what you do besides having just jump into the horde. Maybe if he was like jumping, like if there were a bunch of like tables, like outdoor tables, he was jumping from table to table, that would have been the justification or something. It would have looked kind of silly. Yeah, I don't know. That's a good point. I don't really know what you do to change it, but that's a good point that it does seem to just the level of how threatening the zombies are does kind of fluctuate depending on where they need to be for the plot.
Which I mean, that's something you can always get away with in writing. It's not the biggest thing as long as everything around it is executed fine. So it doesn't take me out of it. But it is always one of those things where the moment I get to that scene, I'm just like, could he though? Like that's always just like I feel like that situation is just they're fucked. And I think maybe they could have got around that. But I think the humor in it still works.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'd definitely agree there. I'm trying to think if there's anything else I want to say about this. I hate to wrap early, but we are. I just think I'm kind of out of stuff to talk about.
It's definitely one of those things that you can only go so far with, like a movie without singing its praises and then just ruining jokes for people.
Yeah, unfortunately. I'm tempted to go like, okay, do you have a favorite quote or line? But we've already quoted it enough and talked about specific scenes, so oh well. If you haven't watched it, sorry we ruined the movie. Let's go ahead and go on to ratings. Why don't you go first? I'm curious where you're sitting at on it.
Well, again, this movie's something that I've got a very deep connection to it with, just because it's been one of the movies I've watched religiously, like growing up, and every time I go back to it after a few years, it's just like, oh, this is really good. Like I can still sit down and enjoy this, which is normally rare for me. I don't normally go back to films, but this is one that it always makes me laugh. Like, even if I know the jokes are coming, the delivery and the timing still gets me. And I think that's a strength to Edgar Wright, and I think that's a strength to the performances and the writing. So definitely something that if you're a fan of comedy or zombies or just good filmmaking in general, I definitely give this a watch. I think you can learn a lot of things from this as a writer, because how they execute the character and of Shaun and just how the world is built around that is really smart, and you can apply it to any type of writing, like be a drama or anything. Like that's a good lesson to take for how you build a world around a character. So for me, it's gonna get 5 out of 5 fuck-a-doodle-doos.
Alrighty. For me, I do think it is really, really good. It doesn't necessarily, it's not as important a movie to me, I guess. It's one of those things, like, I saw it, once or twice, and I've always thought it's a good movie, but it's never, like, really stuck with me in a huge way, so I'm gonna take a little bit off of it for that, just because my level of personal enjoyment isn't as high. But really, it is just a very solid film. So I'm going to give it a 4.5 out of 5 Winchesters.
There you go.
There we go. I knew it was real. Alrighty. So then we need a discussion topic for next week, and it falls to me. Damn it, that's not fair. Nah, it would have been anyway. Damn it. What is this bullshit? What could we talk about? This is the part where we pad out the episode to get to an hour, where I just try to come up with some bullshit. Kind of got something, I'm not sure really quite how to put it, but it's kind of based on the discussion we were having briefly before we started recording. So let's talk about changing platforms in the digital age. You know, we used to, because it's something that happens a lot. There was Friendster, then there was MySpace, then there was Facebook, there was Skype, then there's Discord, or hell, there was Yahoo and MSM then there was Skype, then there was Discord. Let's talk about like the way that changes and just what happens in those kind of changing platforms. And we can broaden it out a bit too, and we can talk about, like, you know, game systems too, because I think, you know, changing platforms and communities, I think is an interesting topic that's got some meat to it.
Yeah, I think that could work.
All right. Join us next week for that one, everyone. Until then, I'm the Philosopher.
And I'm a geek for fun.
And we are your geeky gentlemen. And we will be discussing